The notification hit my phone at 2:47 a.m., piercing through the darkness of our bedroom with its harsh blue light. Transaction alert, 8,500 baht withdrawn from joint savings. I blinked, certain I was misreading the numbers through sleep-blurred eyes, but the digits remained stubbornly clear, mocking me with their precision. Beside me, Marcus slept peacefully, his breathing deep and even, one arm thrown across the space where I usually lay. I'd gotten up for water just moments before, a simple midnight thirst that had inadvertently saved me from discovering this betrayal in the morning, when he'd have time to craft some elaborate excuse. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My hands trembled as I opened our banking app, the Face ID recognition almost failing because of the shock etched across my features. There it was, in damning black and white, a cash withdrawal from the ATM at Rodeo Drive, at 2:30 in the morning, while my husband of 12 years supposedly attended his monthly poker game with the boys. I scrolled through our transaction history, my stomach dropping with each swipe. This wasn't the first suspicious withdrawal. How had I missed them? $3,200 2 weeks ago, $5,100 last month, $2,800 the month before. Always cash, always late at night, always on his supposed poker nights. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals, each detail becoming sharper and more painful. The joint savings account we'd built together over years of sacrifice now showed a balance of $1,247, down from the $45,000 we'd saved for the house renovation. The kitchen remodel I'd spent months planning, the nursery we'd tentatively discussed converting the guest room into, the future we'd carefully constructed dollar by dollar, gone in a series of midnight cash grabs. I sat on the cold bathroom floor, my silk nightgown doing nothing to warm the chill spreading through my body. This wasn't Marcus. This couldn't be Marcus. The man who clipped coupons with me every Sunday, who celebrated when we found gas 3 cents cheaper across town, who insisted we shop generic brands to maximize our savings. But the evidence glared at me from the screen, each transaction tagged with his debit card number, his PIN, his betrayal. A memory surfaced, sharp and sudden. 3 months ago, Marcus mentioning a new colleague, Veronica, who joined his marketing firm. She's got expensive taste, he'd laughed over dinner. Carries a different designer bag every day. Must be nice to have that kind of money. I'd thought nothing of it then, even teased him about noticing her accessories. Now those words echoed with a different resonance entirely. I forced myself to stand, legs unsteady, and crept back to our bedroom doorway. Marcus hadn't moved, still lost in whatever dreams absolved him of his crimes. His phone lay on the nightstand, face down as always. He'd been protective of it lately, taking calls in the garage, texting with the screen angled away from me. I'd attributed it to work stress, maybe planning a surprise for our upcoming anniversary. What a fool I'd been. The poker games had started 6 months ago. You don't mind, do you, Claire? He'd asked. Those brown eyes I'd fallen in love with in college, sparkling with boyish excitement. Just once a month with the guys. Tom's going through his divorce, needs the distraction. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Of course I hadn't minded. I'd encouraged it, even. Happy to see him maintaining friendships as we entered our 30s. I'd used those evenings for my own pursuits. Book club, yoga, catching up on work for my consulting firm, building my business while he demolished our future. I slipped downstairs to my home office, each creak of the old hardwood threatening to wake him. But I needed information before confrontation, knowledge before action. The laptop hummed to life, and I began my investigation with the methodical precision that made me successful in my field. First, the credit card statements. Marcus handled our main cards, insisting it helped him track our budget. Another red flag I'd painted green with trust. I logged into each account, my corporate forensics training kicking in as I documented everything. The Amex showed charges at Cartier, Hermès, Saks Fifth Avenue, designer names that had never graced our modest suburban home. A $4,000 handbag here, $2,500 shoes there. Jewelry purchases that made my simple wedding set seem quaint in comparison. All dated to match those cash withdrawals, creating a paper trail of deceit. My throat constricted as I recognized the pattern. He'd withdraw cash to make it look like gambling losses, then use the credit cards for the actual purchases. The statements showed returns too, just enough to keep the balance manageable, making it seem like he was shopping and returning items, but the cash withdrawals told the real story. That money wasn't coming back. I opened a new spreadsheet, cataloging everything with the kind of detailed analysis I usually reserved for Fortune 500 clients. Total damage, $87,000 over 6 months. My hands stilled on the keyboard. $87,000. Nearly 2 years of my salary, siphoned away for someone else's shopping sprees. A text notification popped up on my laptop, synced to my phone. Marcus's poker buddy Tom. Great game tonight, man. That last hand was brutal. Sarah says hi. My blood turned to ice. Tom was home with his wife. There was no poker game. There had never been any poker games. I minimized the spreadsheet and opened Facebook, searching for Veronica. It didn't take long to find her. Veronica Sinclair, marketing associate at Marcus's firm. Her profile was public, a shrine to conspicuous consumption. There she was, 2 weeks ago, posing with a Hermes bag that looked suspiciously like the $8,000 charge on our Amex. Last month, draped in jewelry from Cartier, pieces matching receipts I'd just documented. But it was the photo from tonight that stopped my heart. Posted just an hour ago, Veronica in a Beverly Hills boutique, arms full of shopping bags, captioned when he says get whatever you want, blessed midnight shopping sugar daddy. The comments below were equally damning. Her friends gushing about her generous man, asking when they'd meet him, speculating about wedding bells. One comment stood out. Girl, his wife is going to find out eventually. Veronica's response. What wife? I screenshot everything, my fingers moving with the kind of numb efficiency that comes with shock. Every photo, every comment, every timestamp that coincided with Marcus's supposed poker nights, the evidence mounted like a prosecutor's case, irrefutable and devastating. A door creaked upstairs. Marcus, probably heading to the bathroom. I had minutes, maybe less, before he noticed my absence. But I wasn't done, not yet. I pulled up our investment accounts next. The IRAs were intact. Those required both signatures to access. But the individual investment account Marcus managed showed similar hemorrhaging. Stocks sold, bonds liquidated, all converted to cash that disappeared into midnight ATM runs. My grandmother's inheritance, the $50,000 she'd left me when she passed 2 years ago, which I'd trustingly added to our joint investments, gone. The startup funds I'd been setting aside to expand my consulting firm, vanished. Our entire financial future, liquidated for Veronica's designer wardrobe. The creak of footsteps on the stairs sent me into action. I emailed myself every screenshot, every statement, every piece of evidence, then cleared the browser history. By the time Marcus appeared in the doorway, I was calmly sipping water at the kitchen counter. Claire, what are you doing up? His voice was rough with sleep, his hair endearingly mussed. Even now, knowing what I knew, my traitorous heart clenched at the sight of him. Couldn't sleep, I managed, proud of how steady my voice remained. How was poker? He stretched, yawning. Brutal. Lost a few hundred, but Tom lost more, so I don't feel too bad. A few hundred. The lie rolled off his tongue like honey, sweet and smooth. I watched him pour himself water, studying this stranger wearing my husband's face. When had he become this person? Or had he always been, and I'd been too blind to see? Coming back to bed? He asked, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, let him lead me upstairs, let him pull me close beneath the covers, his arm draped over me, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Within minutes, his breathing deepened again, secure in his deception. But I lay awake, my mind racing through possibilities. Divorce was the obvious answer, but that would be too simple, too clean. Marcus had spent 6 months methodically destroying our financial future for another woman's shopping addiction. He deserved more than paperwork and a division of assets, what little assets remained. As dawn light crept through our curtains, illuminating the bedroom we'd painted together last spring, I made my decision. Marcus had emptied our accounts for his girlfriend's shopping sprees. It was only fair that I return the favor. But I wouldn't stop at his bank accounts. No, my revenge would be far more comprehensive. By the time I was done, Marcus would understand the true cost of betrayal. Every dollar he'd stolen, every lie he'd told, every future he'd destroyed, I would extract payment for all of it, with interest. I turned to study his sleeping face, memorizing the features I'd once traced with such tenderness. He looked peaceful, content, unburdened by conscience. That would change. Starting today, Marcus would learn that some debts can never be repaid, and some wounds never heal. The alarm clock showed 5:47 a.m. In 2 hours, Marcus would wake, shower, kiss me goodbye, and head to the office where Veronica waited with her designer bags and golden digger dreams. He'd sit through meetings and presentations, maybe steal a few moments to text her, plan their next shopping excursion with my money. But while he played out his charade, I would begin dismantling his life piece by piece. Every lie would be exposed, every secret revealed, every comfortable assumption shattered. He thought he'd been clever with his midnight withdrawals and careful credit card juggling. He had no idea who he'd married. Claire Martinez wasn't just a suburban wife who'd trusted too easily. I was a forensic financial consultant who'd built a reputation for uncovering corporate fraud. I'd toppled CEOs and exposed Ponzi schemes. Marcus and his retail therapy mistress were about to learn why my clients paid me 6 figures to find what others wanted hidden. The first phase would begin immediately. While Marcus thought I was heading to my book club this evening, I'd be meeting with the private investigator I'd helped on a case last year. By the time Marcus came home from his next poker game, I'd have enough ammunition to destroy not just his financial future but his professional one as well. After all, Veronica wasn't the only one who could document her life on social media. The difference was, my posts would include receipts, literal and figurative. Every dollar would be accounted for, every lie cataloged, every betrayal broadcast to the audience he valued most. But that was just the beginning. The real artistry would come in the unraveling, the slow dissolution of everything Marcus held dear. His reputation, his career, his relationship with his family who still believed he was the golden child who'd married well and lived responsibly. I smiled in the growing light, a plan crystallizing with beautiful clarity. Marcus stirred beside me, mumbling something in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of his next shopping spree, the next withdrawal from our accounts, the next lie to his trusting wife. "Sleep well, my darling," I thought, watching the sun paint golden stripes across our bedroom wall. "Enjoy these last few hours of peace. Because when you wake, though you won't know it yet, your destruction will have already begun." The notification on my phone still glowed, $8,500 withdrawn. Such a specific amount. I wondered what designer trinket had caught Veronica's eye this time. Whatever it was, I hoped she enjoyed it. It would be the last thing she ever received from my husband. Because while Marcus had been playing sugar daddy with our savings, I'd been building something far more valuable than a designer wardrobe. I'd been building a reputation, a network, and skills that would serve me well in the war to come. He'd emptied our accounts for shopping sprees. I would empty his life of everything. Systematically, thoroughly, and with the kind of precision that would leave him wondering how he'd never seen it coming. The alarm would ring soon, our last normal morning together, though only I knew it. I closed my eyes, savoring the anticipation. Revenge, I'd learned in my professional life, was best served not cold, but calculated, and I had so much calculating to do. Marcus's morning routine unfolded with clockwork predictability. The 6:30 alarm, followed by his shower. The careful selection of his suit, always the navy on Wednesdays, and the precise amount of gel to tame his dark hair. I watched from bed, feigning sleep, cataloging every gesture with new eyes. How many mornings had I observed this ritual with affection? Now I studied it like a general mapping enemy movements. "Morning beautiful," he murmured, leaning down to kiss my forehead. The cologne I'd bought him last Christmas wafted over me, now tainted with the knowledge of who else had been close enough to smell it. "Morning," I managed, stretching with practiced normalcy. "Coffee's on the timer, you're the best." His smile was warm, genuine even. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. How could he betray me so thoroughly and still look at me with such apparent tenderness? I followed him downstairs, playing my role perfectly. The doting wife, pouring his coffee just how he liked it. 2 sugars, splash of cream, making his toast while he scrolled through his phone, probably checking if Veronica had posted more evidence of their affair online. "Busy day ahead?" I asked, spreading peanut butter with mechanical precision. "The usual. Budget meetings, client presentations." He glanced up and something in my expression must have caught his attention. "You okay? You look tired. Just didn't sleep well." The truth, weaponized as camouflage. "Maybe I'll work from home today." "Good idea. Take it easy." Another kiss, this one on the lips, tasting of coffee and lies. "Don't wait up tonight. The poker game might run late." The poker game, Wednesday night poker. I'd checked the calendar, there was no game scheduled this week. Tom's family was visiting from out of state, but Marcus didn't know I knew that. Have fun, I said, smoothing his tie. Try not to lose too much. His laugh was rich with irony he couldn't appreciate. I'll be careful with our money, don't worry. Our money. The words hung in the air after he left, poisonous in their deceit. I stood at the kitchen window, watching his BMW pull out of the driveway. The car payments were current only because they auto-drafted from his personal account, the one he hadn't given me access to. Another red flag I'd painted green. The moment his taillights disappeared, I transformed. The silk nightgown replaced by a sharp business suit. The sleepy housewife persona shed like dead skin. Claire, the corporate fraud investigator, emerged, armed with determination and a plan that had crystallized in the pre-dawn hours. First call, Alexandra Kim, private investigator extraordinaire and former colleague from my forensics days. She answered on the second ring. Claire Martinez, I was wondering when you'd call. You knew, I shouldn't have been surprised. Alex had an uncanny ability to sense marital discord. Honey, when a financial forensics expert suddenly needs a PI recommendation at a dinner party, it's either embezzlement or infidelity. Sometimes both. Both, I confirmed, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Can you meet today? I'm clearing my schedule. Noon at our usual place? Our usual place was a discreet cafe downtown, where conversations disappeared into the ambient noise of business lunches and espresso machines. I had 4 hours to prepare my presentation. In corporate investigations, documentation was everything. This would be no different. I settled into my home office, pulling up the evidence I'd compiled overnight. But this was just the beginning. Marcus had been sloppy, drunk on his secret success. Time to see how deep the rabbit hole went. His laptop sat in the den, password protected but hardly Fort Knox to someone who'd helped the FBI crack insider trading rings. It took me 12 minutes to access his email, another 5 to set up silent forwarding to a new account I'd created for this purpose. The messages painted a picture more damaging than I'd imagined. Not just evidence of the affair, though there was plenty of that, including some photographs that made me grateful I'd skipped breakfast, but something far more valuable for my purposes. Marcus and Veronica weren't just conducting an affair, they were conducting it on company time, using company resources, email after email sent during business hours, planning their rendezvous, the company credit card used for their hotel rooms, later doctored to look like client entertainment, expense reports that would make any auditor salivate. I forwarded everything to my secure cloud storage, then dove deeper. His browser history revealed visits to jewelry sites, real estate listings for luxury condos, even a classic car dealership, all aspirational window shopping for a lifestyle funded by theft from his wife. But it was the draft email I found that stopped me cold. Once the divorce is final, we can stop sneaking around. Claire's been getting suspicious, asking about the poker games. I'll file next month, claim irreconcilable differences. She has no idea about the money. My lawyer says since her consulting brings in good income, I might even get alimony. Then we can finally live the way we deserve. Love you, M. He was planning to divorce me, to take half of what little remained, and claim alimony from the business I'd built. The audacity was breathtaking. I screenshot the draft, adding it to my growing arsenal. By 11:30, I had 3 binders of evidence, financial records, emails, social media posts, even security footage from our doorbell camera showing Marcus leaving at times he'd claimed to be home. Alex would be impressed. The drive downtown gave me time to think. Revenge was a dish best served with multiple courses, each more devastating than the last. Marcus had given me the perfect ingredients with his corporate misconduct, but I needed more. I needed to understand the full scope of his betrayal before I could properly repay it. Alex was already waiting at our corner table, her appearance as nondescript as always. Average height, average build, forgettable features, the perfect camouflage for someone in her profession. But her eyes were sharp as surgical instruments, missing nothing. You look good for someone whose world just imploded, she observed, gesturing to the chair across from her. Compartmentalization is a valuable skill. I set my binders on the table. I need surveillance, asset traces, and a deep dive into Veronica Sinclair. Alex whistled low as she flipped through my documentation. This is thorough. You sure you need me? I need things I can't get legally, and I need a witness to his activities who isn't his betrayed spouse. Fair point. She pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Veronica Sinclair, 28, hired 6 months ago at... She paused. Interesting. Her previous employment history is spotty. Lots of short-term positions at companies where the executives are married men. A pattern, a profession. Your husband isn't her first sugar daddy, Claire, just her current one. Alex turned the tablet toward me. 3 previous companies, 3 affairs with married executives, 3 expensive departure packages when things got complicated. The information shifted my perspective. Veronica wasn't just a homewrecker, she was a professional, which meant she'd have strategies, possibly even exit plans. This wasn't her first rodeo. I need everything, I said. Her finances, her connections, her patterns, and I need surveillance on both of them starting immediately. Consider it done. Alex closed the binder. What's your endgame here? Divorce? Criminal charges? I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. Complete and total destruction. Financial, professional, social. I want them to lose everything, the way I've lost everything. That's ambitious and expensive. I have resources Marcus doesn't know about. My grandmother was smarter than I was. She left me a separate inheritance he never knew existed. I kept it in a trust, planning to surprise him for our 20th anniversary with a dream vacation. Alex's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, Claire. Nobody deserves this. Save the sympathy for someone who needs it. I need results. We spent another hour outlining the surveillance parameters. Alex would have a team on Marcus starting tonight, tracking his every move at the supposed poker game. Veronica would be under watch 24/7, her spending patterns documented, her other potential targets identified. As we prepared to leave, Alex touched my arm. Be careful. Cornered animals do desperate things. And Marcus has already shown he's capable of more than you thought. Her warning echoed as I drove home, but it only strengthened my resolve. Marcus thought he was the predator in this scenario, with me as his hapless prey. He was about to learn otherwise. Back home, I had emails to review from the forwarding system I'd set up. Marcus and Veronica had been busy. Lunch plans at an expensive restaurant downtown. Discussion of a weekend getaway to Napa, on my grandmother's dime, no doubt. But it was an email from Marcus's boss that provided my next opportunity. Marcus, great job on the Henderson presentation. The client was impressed. I want you to lead the pitch for the Morrison Industries account next month. This could mean a promotion if we land it. Best, Richard. A promotion. More money for him to steal, more status to feed his ego, but also more visibility, more scrutiny, more to lose when his house of cards collapsed. I pulled up the Henderson presentation on his laptop. It was good work, I had to admit. Marcus could be brilliant when he applied himself, but as I reviewed the client notes, something nagged at me. The numbers in his projection models seemed familiar. Then it hit me. I opened my own files from a consultation I'd done 2 years ago. There they were, my projections, my analysis, my strategies. Marcus had stolen my work, presented it as his own, and won client approval with it. The theft went deeper than money. He'd been mining my expertise, my intellectual property, building his career on my uncredited labor. How many other presentations had he pilfered? How many of his successes were actually mine? I added this to my evidence files, then made a decision. The Morrison Industries pitch would be his downfall. I happened to know the CFO there. We'd worked together on a fraud investigation 3 years ago. Marcus had no idea about that connection. He also had no idea that I'd be feeding information to ensure his pitch failed spectacularly. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Heading to lunch with clients, might be late, love you. Clients. I checked his calendar, no client meetings scheduled. The lies came so easily to him now, reflexive as breathing. I responded with practiced normalcy. Have fun, I'm making your favorite for dinner. Let him think I was planning chicken parmesan. I was planning something far more complex. The afternoon dissolved into research and strategy. I created dossiers on every major player in Marcus's professional life. His boss Richard, divorced with 2 kids, reputation for being tough but fair. The other executives, their weaknesses, their pressure points. Information was ammunition, and I was building an arsenal. Veronica's social media provided a timeline of their affair. 6 months of escalating extravagance, each post a breadcrumb in the trail of their deception. But I noticed something else. She was getting careless. Recent posts showed her at Marcus's office in areas where a junior marketing associate had no business being. The executive conference room. Richard's office when he was away. She was overplaying her hand, drunk on newfound access to power. That carelessness would be useful. By 5 o'clock, I had phase 1 of my plan mapped out. Tonight, while Marcus played poker with his mistress, I would begin the slow unraveling of his carefully constructed life. But first, I had a performance to give. I prepared dinner as promised, setting the table with our good china. When Marcus walked in at 6:30, the house smelled like home and happiness. His favorite meal waiting, his favorite wine breathing on the counter. "Wow, what's the occasion?" He wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stirred the sauce. "Can't a wife spoil her husband?" I leaned into his embrace, playing my part perfectly. "Besides, you've been working so hard lately, all those late nights. Was it my imagination, or did he stiffen slightly?" "Just trying to provide for us," he said, releasing me to pour the wine. "You deserve the best." "We deserve the best," I corrected, accepting the glass he offered. "We're a team, remember?" "Of course." He clinked his glass against mine. "Always." Dinner was a masterclass in deception from both sides. Marcus regaled me with stories from his fictional client lunch while I feigned interest and asked follow-up questions I knew would trap him later. He mentioned the Morrison Industries opportunity, downplaying its importance while his eyes gleamed with ambition. "That's wonderful," I gushed. "You'll do amazing, you always do." "Well, I learned from the best." He reached for my hand across the table. "Your business sense rubbed off on me. More than he knew. More than he'd ever admit." As 8 o'clock approached, he began the familiar routine of preparing for his poker night. The careful selection of cash from his wallet, prop money, since the real withdrawals happened at ATMs far from home. The kiss goodbye, the promise not to lose too much, the reminder not to wait up. I watched from the doorway as he backed out of the driveway, waving like a 1950s housewife seeing her husband off to work. The moment his car turned the corner, I sprang into action. Phase 1 required precision timing. I had 4 hours before he returned, 4 hours to plant the seeds of his destruction. But first I needed to confirm my suspicions about tonight's real destination. Alex's text arrived within minutes. Subject just pulled into the Ritz-Carlton downtown. Veronica's car already in valet. The Ritz-Carlton, where we'd spent our anniversary last year, a splurge I'd saved for months to afford. The violation felt fresh, salt in an open wound, but emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I drove to Marcus's office, using the spare keycard he didn't know I'd copied months ago. The building was nearly empty, just a few workaholics burning the midnight oil, perfect for my purposes. His office was a shrine to false success, awards that should have had my name on them, photos of us at company events where he'd claimed credit for my ideas, the expensive desk set I'd bought him when he got promoted, a promotion based on stolen work, I now knew. I settled at his computer, accessing his files with the password I'd cracked earlier. Then I began my modifications. Subtle changes to the Morrison Industries presentation. Numbers shifted just enough to be catastrophically wrong. Projections that would fall apart under scrutiny. Citations that led nowhere. But I was careful. The changes would only become apparent during the live presentation, when it was too late to correct them, when Richard and the other executives were watching, when the Morrison Industries team was judging. Next, I accessed the company's expense system. Marcus had been sloppy here too, confident in his ability to manipulate the reports. I didn't delete anything that would be too obvious. Instead, I restored original receipts he'd doctored, removed his alterations to hotel bills, unveiled the truth he'd worked so hard to hide. The digital breadcrumbs led directly to gross misconduct and embezzlement. But they needed to be discovered naturally, by someone other than the betrayed wife. I crafted an anonymous email to the company's internal audit department, scheduled to send in 3 days. Just enough time for Marcus to dig himself deeper. As I prepared to leave, something caught my eye. A jewelry box hidden in his bottom drawer, behind old files. Inside, a diamond necklace that took my breath away. The receipt showed a purchase date of next week, our anniversary. For a moment, confusion clouded my purpose. Was I wrong? Was there an explanation? Then I saw the engraving on the back of the pendant, V forever. V Veronica. The necklace wasn't for me. Even our anniversary had been contaminated by his affair. I photographed the evidence and returned the box to its hiding place. Let him give it to her. Let her wear it. It would make the final revelation all the sweeter. I left his office exactly as I'd found it, erasing any trace of my presence. The security cameras would show nothing. I'd learned their blind spots during company parties. As I drove home, Alex sent another update. Subjects just ordered room service. Champagne and strawberries. Classy. I pulled into our garage at 11:45, 15 minutes before Marcus typically returned from his fictional poker games. Time enough to pour myself wine, change into pajamas, and settle in with a book. The picture of domestic tranquility. He walked in at midnight precisely, carrying the weight of his deception in the slump of his shoulders. The guilt was eating at him, I realized. Good, it should. How was the game? I asked, not looking up from my novel. Brutal. Lost 300. He loosened his tie, the gesture so familiar it hurt. Tom cleaned everyone out. Poor baby, I patted the couch beside me. Come here. He collapsed next to me, and I caught the scent of unfamiliar perfume beneath his cologne. Chanel No. 5. Veronica's signature scent, according to her social media. I catalogued this detail, adding it to my mental file. You work too hard, I murmured, running my fingers through his hair. Maybe you should take a break from the poker games. Focus on the Morrison pitch. Maybe you're right. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. I want to nail this promotion, for us. I know you do. The lie came easily now. I was learning from the master, after all. We sat in comfortable silence, the clock ticking toward our new reality. In 3 days, the audit department would receive an anonymous tip. In 2 weeks, the Morrison presentation would implode, and somewhere in between, Veronica would learn that her latest mark wasn't the goldmine she'd thought. But those were future satisfactions. Tonight, I held my husband close and imagined his world crumbling around him. He'd emptied our accounts for shopping sprees. I would empty his life of everything that mattered. The architecture of revenge was complex, requiring patience and precision. But I'd always been good at building things, and even better at tearing them down. I love you, Marcus whispered, half asleep against my shoulder. I know, I replied, staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until his destruction. Phase 1 was complete, the seeds were planted, the trap was set, and the countdown had begun. All that remained was to watch it unfold, one calculated move at a time. The anonymous tip to the audit department was scheduled to send in 12 hours, but I wasn't content to wait idly. 3 days had passed since I'd discovered Marcus's betrayal, 3 days of perfecting my performance as the oblivious wife while orchestrating his downfall. This morning brought new opportunities for acceleration. You're up early, Marcus observed, finding me at the kitchen table with my laptop at 5 a.m. His hair was still mussed from sleep, his robe hanging open over pajama bottoms. Couldn't sleep, figured I'd get some work done. I minimized the window showing Veronica's credit report, which Alex had somehow obtained. The woman was drowning in debt, maxed credit cards, defaulted student loans, an eviction notice from her previous apartment. No wonder she needed a sugar daddy. You work too hard. He kissed the top of my head, a gesture that once brought comfort and now felt like spiders on my skin. Want some coffee? Already brewing. I watched him move around our kitchen with the comfortable familiarity of 12 years. Big day today. Morrison Industries prep. Richard wants to see my preliminary presentation. His chest puffed with pride. If this goes well, Regional VP, I finished, playing the supportive wife. You've earned it. He beamed, pouring 2 mugs. We've earned it. None of this would be possible without you. The irony was suffocating. I forced a smile, accepting the coffee he offered. Speaking of which, I have that conference in Chicago tomorrow, remember? His face went carefully blank. Right. The consulting thing. The consulting thing. My career reduced to a dismissive phrase. I catalogued this insult, adding it to the tally. I'll be gone 3 days. Will you be okay? I watched the calculations behind his eyes. 3 days of unmonitored freedom. 3 days to play with Veronica without crafting elaborate poker game lies. His pupils actually dilated with anticipation. I'll manage, he said, trying for casual. Maybe I'll use the time to really focus on the Morrison pitch, or focus on spending what remained of our savings on his mistress. But I simply nodded, playing my part. I'll leave some meals in the freezer. You're too good to me. Yes, I had been. That was about to change. After Marcus left for work, I put the next phase into motion. The Chicago conference was real. I was scheduled to speak on a panel about financial fraud detection, but I'd modified my plans. Instead of staying at the conference hotel, I'd booked a room at a modest business hotel under an assumed name, close enough to maintain my alibi, far enough to operate freely. Alex called as I was packing. Interesting development. Veronica just applied for 3 new credit cards using her work address. Let me guess, with Marcus as a reference? Her emergency contact. And she listed her income as $150,000. I laughed, bitter and sharp. She makes $45,000. If that. The applications also show a new address, luxury high-rise downtown. Rents $4,500 a month. My blood chilled. She's already spending money she doesn't have, or money she expects to have soon. I did some digging. The lease starts next month. She put down first, last, and security. That's $13,500. Exactly the amount Marcus could access from his personal account without triggering our joint account notifications. I closed my eyes, seeing the pattern. He was planning to leave me, set Veronica up in her new apartment, and then file for divorce while I was at the conference. The coward's way out. Keep watching, I told Alex, and get me everything on that apartment building. Security, access codes, management company. Already on it. Claire. She paused. He's moving fast. Whatever you're planning, you might want to accelerate. She was right. Marcus was escalating, which meant I needed to as well. I made 3 phone calls in rapid succession. First, to Richard's assistant, requesting a meeting to discuss exciting opportunities for collaboration between our firms. She scheduled me for Friday, the day of Marcus's Morrison presentation. Second, to our bank, reporting my debit card stolen and requesting a freeze on all accounts pending investigation. The representative was very understanding about my concerns regarding suspicious activity. Third, to my attorney, scheduling an emergency consultation for that afternoon. By noon, I was sitting in Diane Walsh's office, watching her review the evidence I'd compiled. Her expression grew increasingly grim with each page. "This is comprehensive," she said finally, removing her reading glasses. "Financial abuse, adultery, embezzlement from his employer. You have grounds for an at-fault divorce that would leave him with nothing." "I don't want a divorce. Not yet." Her eyebrows rose. "May I ask why?" "Because that would be too easy, too clean." I leaned forward. "I want to know my options for protecting my assets while letting him hang himself." Diane smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. "I do enjoy a client who thinks strategically. Let's discuss some creative legal maneuvers." For the next hour, we crafted a plan that would protect my business, my inheritance, and my future earnings, while allowing Marcus to continue his self-destruction. Temporary separation of assets due to suspected fraud, power of attorney modifications, trust restructuring that would take months for him to even discover. "This is brilliant," Diane admitted, initialing the documents. "Completely legal, totally binding, and he won't know until it's far too late. That's the idea." I signed where she indicated, each signature another nail in Marcus's coffin. "How soon can these take effect?" "I'll file this afternoon. By tomorrow morning, your assets will be protected." She paused. "Claire, I have to ask, are you safe? Men who steal from their wives can escalate when cornered. He doesn't know he's cornered yet. By the time he figures it out, I'll be untouchable." I left her office feeling lighter than I had in days. The legal protection was in place. Now for the professional destruction. That evening, I prepared for my conference with meticulous care. Marcus watched me pack, hovering in the doorway with poorly concealed eagerness. "Sure you don't want me to drive you to the airport? Uber's fine, you focus on your presentation." I folded clothes with practiced efficiency. "This is your big moment." "Our big moment," he corrected, but his heart wasn't in it. He was already mentally spending the 3 days of freedom I was giving him. We had dinner at his favorite restaurant, his choice, though he pretended to defer to me. I watched him order the expensive wine, the prime rib, the dessert we'd normally skip, spending money we supposedly didn't have, celebrating a future built on lies. "To success," he toasted, raising his glass. "To getting what we deserve," I countered, clinking crystal against crystal. That night, our last night together, though he didn't know it, Marcus was especially attentive. Guilt, perhaps, or the giddiness of anticipated freedom. I lay beside him afterward, staring at the ceiling, counting his breaths until they deepened into sleep. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed for the last time. My bags were already in the car, my laptop bag containing enough evidence to destroy several lives. I looked back once at the bedroom doorway, at the shape of the man I'd loved and trusted. Then I left, closing the door with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. The drive to my hotel was peaceful, the roads empty except for long-haul truckers and shift workers. I checked in under my assumed name, paid cash, and settled into the anonymous room that would be my command center for the next phase. Day 1 of my conference began with Marcus's text, "Have a safe flight, baby. Kill it at the conference, love you." I responded with appropriate emojis and platitudes, then turned my attention to the real work. Alex had sent overnight surveillance reports. Marcus had left for work an hour late, stopping at the ATM to withdraw the daily maximum from his personal account. The bank freeze I'd initiated on our joint accounts hadn't affected his individual access yet. By noon, the dominoes were starting to fall. The audit department had received the anonymous tip early, eager beavers that they were. According to my source in accounting, a woman Marcus had passed over for promotion twice. They were already pulling expense reports and cross-referencing receipts. "It's bad," she whispered over the phone. "Really bad. How did we miss this?" "People see what they expect to see," I replied, watching Marcus's office building from a coffee shop across the street. "When will they act? Tomorrow, maybe Friday. They want to be thorough." Perfect timing. The Morrison presentation was Friday afternoon. I smiled, imagining the collision of consequences. Marcus, meanwhile, was making the most of his freedom. The GPS tracker I'd placed on his car, legal since it was jointly owned, showed him leaving work at 2 p.m., heading to Veronica's current apartment. They emerged 2 hours later, driving to the luxury high-rise she'd leased. I followed at a safe distance, watching them tour the building with a leasing agent. Veronica clung to Marcus's arm, playing the role of devoted girlfriend while her eyes calculated square footage and upgrade potential. He looked proud, powerful, the successful man providing for his woman. Neither of them noticed me in the lobby, just another businesswoman waiting for an appointment. I filmed their entire interaction on my phone, capturing the moment Marcus signed papers co-signing her lease, no doubt making himself financially liable for an apartment his wife knew nothing about. That evening, while they celebrated at an expensive steakhouse, I met with 3 of Marcus's former colleagues, women who'd left the company under suspicious circumstances, their careers derailed by whisper campaigns and missing project credits. They were eager to talk once I showed them my evidence. "He did the same thing to me," Sarah Chen revealed, her hands shaking with long-suppressed anger. "Stole my code, presented it as his own, then had me transferred to another department when I complained. The boys' club protected him," added Jennifer Martinez. "Richard likes him, sees him as a younger version of himself. Richard won't like him much longer," I promised, sharing select portions of the embezzlement evidence. "Would you be willing to go on record?" All 3 agreed immediately. Their testimonies would add weight to the professional misconduct charges, establishing a pattern of behavior that would be impossible to ignore. Day 2 brought escalation. Marcus, drunk on freedom and Veronica's attention, made increasingly bold moves. The credit card charges rolled in: a $3,000 handbag, $1,500 shoes, a $5,000 bracelet, each purchase documented by the forwarding system I'd set up on his email. But it was his laptop activity that provided the most damaging evidence. Working remotely from Veronica's apartment, he'd accessed confidential client files and forwarded them to her personal email. Trade secrets, pricing strategies, competitive intelligence, all handed over to a junior employee with no authorization or need to know. Corporate espionage, a felony in our state. I documented everything, building a case that would destroy not just his career but his freedom. Meanwhile, the audit department's investigation was accelerating. My source reported that they'd found discrepancies going back 2 years, a pattern of falsified expenses that totaled over $200,000. "They're bringing in outside forensic accountants," she warned. "This is beyond internal discipline now." Good. I wanted witnesses, official documentation, a paper trail that couldn't be buried or explained away. That night, I attended the actual conference briefly, delivering my panel presentation on financial fraud detection. The irony wasn't lost on me, as I discussed the psychology of white-collar criminals, the narcissism that made them believe they were too smart to get caught. "The most dangerous fraudsters," I told the audience, "are those who believe their own lies. They create elaborate justifications for their actions, painting themselves as victims or heroes rather than thieves." The audience took notes, nodding along, unaware that I was describing my husband in real time. After the panel, I retreated to my hotel room to find a frantic voicemail from Marcus. "Hey baby, tried to use the joint account for gas, but my card was declined. Must be some mistake. Can you call the bank? I'm sure it's nothing. Love you." I texted back. "In sessions all day, try your personal account. Sure it's just a glitch." Let him wonder. Let him worry. The freeze would lift automatically in 48 hours, but by then, it would be too late to matter. Day 3, Thursday, brought the perfect storm I'd orchestrated. The audit department formally launched their investigation, pulling Marcus into a conference room for hours of questioning. According to the office gossip network I'd cultivated, he'd emerged pale and shaken, his usual confidence cracked. Richard had been notified of the investigation. The Morrison presentation scheduled for tomorrow now carried the weight of Marcus's entire future. If he nailed it, he might survive the audit with just financial penalties. If he failed, I spent Thursday evening making final preparations. The altered presentation waited like a time bomb on his laptop. The testimonies from his former victims were packaged and ready, and Veronica, sweet greedy Veronica, was about to learn why due diligence mattered in selecting marks. Alex had discovered that Veronica's previous sugar daddy, a pharmaceutical executive, had filed charges against her for blackmail after their affair ended. The charges were dropped when she returned some stolen property, but the police report remained. I anonymously forwarded this interesting tidbit to Marcus's company's HR department, along with evidence of her accessing confidential files. By Thursday night, the stage was perfectly set. Marcus texted that he was working late, preparing for the presentation. In reality, the GPS showed him at a bar with Veronica, probably strategizing about how to handle the audit. I ordered room service and opened my laptop, watching their social media activity in real time. Veronica had posted a photo of champagne glasses, tagged at the bar, celebrating new beginnings with my love. I smiled, raising my own wine glass to the screen. Yes, Veronica, let's celebrate new beginnings. Just not the ones you're expecting. Tomorrow would bring the culmination of my efforts. The Morrison presentation would implode. The audit would reveal his embezzlement. HR would discover Veronica's access to confidential information. And I would be sitting in Richard's office, presenting evidence that would end Marcus's career permanently. He'd emptied our accounts for shopping sprees. Tomorrow I would begin emptying his life of everything. Career, reputation, freedom, and the woman he'd thrown it all away for. The hotel room was quiet except for the hum of my laptop and the distant sound of traffic. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was living his last night of relative freedom, unaware that the walls were closing in from every direction. I pulled up our wedding photo on my phone, studying the faces of the couple we'd been. Young, hopeful, trusting. That Claire would have been destroyed by this betrayal, but that Claire was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Sweet dreams, Marcus, I whispered to the photo before deleting it. Enjoy your last peaceful sleep. Tomorrow, the real show would begin. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made everything appear in sharp focus. I dressed carefully in my best suit, charcoal gray, impeccably tailored, the armor of a professional woman about to destroy a man. The hotel mirror reflected someone I barely recognized, composed, cold, purposeful. Marcus had texted at 6 a.m. Big day. Wish me luck with Morrison, missing you. I responded with heart emojis and encouragement, playing my role one last time while checking the multiple screens displaying his unraveling life. The audit department had called an emergency meeting for 10 a.m. HR had flagged Veronica's access to confidential files, and the Morrison presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. The timing was symphonic in its perfection. I arrived at Marcus's office building at 9:45, signing in at security with my real name. No more hiding. No more skulking in shadows. Today, Claire Martinez would step into the light. Mrs. Martinez, the security guard Thomas brightened with recognition. Haven't seen you in months. Here to surprise Marcus? Something like that, I smiled, accepting my visitor badge. Is Richard in yet? Since 7. Man never stops working. Neither did I. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt like ascending to a throne. Each floor that passed represented another layer of the deception I was about to peel away. By the time those doors opened again, Marcus Chen would be finished. Richard's assistant, Margaret, looked puzzled at my appearance. I thought your meeting was this afternoon. It is, but something urgent has come up that Richard needs to know about immediately. Her expression shifted to concern. Richard ran a tight ship and didn't appreciate surprises, but he appreciated corporate espionage and embezzlement even less. He's in with the audit team, she said carefully. They're discussing. Marcus, yes, I know. I settled into the waiting area chair with practiced calm. I'll wait. The minutes ticked by with exquisite slowness. Through the glass walls I could see the conference room where serious-faced auditors spread papers across the table like evidence at a crime scene. Which, essentially, they were. Richard stood at the head, his expression growing darker with each revelation. At 10:15, the door opened and the audit team filed out, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Richard remained, shoulders rigid with controlled fury. Margaret caught his attention, gesturing toward me. His eyebrows rose, but he waved me in. Claire, this is unexpected. He didn't offer me a seat, still processing the morning's revelations. I thought our meeting was at 2. Yes. I closed the door behind me, sealing us into the fishbowl of his office. But what I have to share couldn't wait. It's about Marcus. If you're here to defend him, I'm here to bury him. I set my laptop bag on his conference table, pulling out the first of many files. May I? He nodded slowly, sinking into his chair as I began my presentation. Evidence of stolen work, dating back 5 years, testimonies from former employees, the corporate espionage with Veronica, the falsified client data he planned to present to Morrison Industries in 3 hours. Richard's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally a cold rage that matched my own. He stole your work? His voice was dangerously quiet, consistently. The Henderson presentation that impressed you so much. Mine, the tectonic solutions that landed 3 new clients, my algorithms. I pulled up side-by-side comparisons on my laptop. I have timestamps, original files, development notes, everything. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I trusted my husband, because I believed his success was our success. I met his gaze steadily. Because I didn't know he was funding his mistress's shopping addiction with embezzled funds while stealing my intellectual property to advance his career. Richard flinched at the word mistress. His own marriage had imploded over an affair. He had no tolerance for infidelity in his organization. Veronica Sinclair, I continued, sliding her dossier across the table, hired 6 months ago, precisely when Marcus's embezzlement accelerated. She's accessed confidential files without authorization, received proprietary information from Marcus, and has a history of targeting married executives. Jesus Christ! Richard rubbed his temples, looking older than his 58 years. How deep does this go? Deep enough to sink the Morrison presentation if you let him deliver it. I pulled up the altered files on my screen. He's planning to present falsified projections based on stolen work. When Morrison's team analyzes the numbers, and they will, they'll find catastrophic errors. It won't just lose you the account. It'll damage your reputation permanently. Richard stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, the city churned with its usual Friday morning energy, oblivious to the corporate execution taking place 20 floors up. What do you want, Claire? Justice. Protection for the employees he's harmed. And a chance to save your Morrison deal. He turned, eyebrows raised. Save it? I created the original projections he stole. I can present the real data, the actual solutions. Morrison Industries gets what they need, you maintain your reputation, and Marcus gets what he deserves. You want to present instead of him. I want to present the truth. What you do with Marcus is your business, though I'd suggest having security standing by. Richard was quiet for a long moment, calculating angles like the chess player he was. Then he smiled, sharp and predatory. Margaret, he called through the intercom, get me Paul from security, and tell the Morrison team we're adjusting our presentation lineup. The plan shifted into motion with corporate efficiency. While Richard handled the logistics, I excused myself to the ladies' room, where I found Veronica reapplying lipstick with shaking hands. Rough morning? I asked pleasantly, meeting her eyes in the mirror. She startled, clearly recognizing me from Marcus's photos. You're Claire? Mrs. Chen, I corrected, washing my hands with deliberate calm, though not for much longer. I don't know what you think. I think you've been accessing confidential files without authorization. I think you've been receiving stolen intellectual property. I think your previous employer in Philadelphia might be interested to know where you surfaced. I dried my hands slowly, savoring her growing panic. But mostly, I think you should start packing your desk. You can't prove anything. I smiled, pulling out my phone to show her a screenshot of her own social media post, her at Marcus's desk after hours, confidential client information clearly visible on the screen behind her. Instagram stories aren't as temporary as you think. Digital forensics is my specialty. I moved toward the door, pausing for one last shot. Oh, and that luxury apartment you just leased? The one Marcus co-signed for? You might want to review the fine print about what happens when your guarantor is convicted of embezzlement. I left her standing there, color draining from her perfectly contoured face. Back in Richard's office, the machinery of corporate justice was in full motion. The head of security briefed his team while HR prepared termination documents. The audit team compiled their evidence into a presentation that would precede mine to Morrison Industries, full transparency about the discovered misconduct and the immediate corrective actions. At noon, Marcus texted again. Final prep for Morrison. Feeling good about this? I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. At 1:30, I stood in the executive conference room, watching the Morrison Industries team arrive. 3 senior executives, including their CFO, Catherine Morrison herself, a woman who'd built her company from nothing and had no patience for corporate bullshit. Catherine, Richard greeted her warmly despite the circumstances. Thank you for your patience with the agenda change. Your message was intriguing, she replied, sharp eyes scanning the room and landing on me. Miss Martinez, I remember you from the Deloitte conference 2 years ago. Your presentation on forensic analysis was brilliant. Thank you. I hope today's will be equally illuminating. Marcus arrived at 1:50, breezing through the door with his signature confidence. The sight of me at the presentation table stopped him cold. Claire, what are you doing here? I thought you were in Chicago. Change of plans. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Richard asked me to assist with the presentation. His confusion was palpable, but Richard's presence kept him from questioning further. He took his seat, pulling out his laptop with slightly trembling hands. The audit that morning had shaken him, but he still believed he could salvage this. Before we begin, Richard announced, I need to address some internal matters with full transparency. The next 15 minutes were brutal. Richard laid out the embezzlement charges, the audit findings, the immediate actions being taken. With each revelation, Marcus shrank further into his chair. But the killing blow came when Richard turned to me. We've also discovered that much of the work attributed to Mr. Chen was actually created by his wife, Claire Martinez, without attribution or compensation. In the interest of presenting Morrison Industries with accurate information and maintaining our integrity, she'll be delivering today's presentation. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded, standing so quickly his chair rolled back. Claire doesn't even work here. She can't sit down, Mr. Chen. Richard's voice could have frozen hell. Or security will help you. Marcus sat, his face cycling through rage, disbelief, and finally the dawning realization that he'd been thoroughly outmaneuvered. I began my presentation with calm precision, walking the Morrison team through the real data, the actual solutions, the strategies I developed over months of careful analysis. Catherine Morrison leaned forward, engaged, asking pointed questions that I answered with the depth of knowledge only the true creator could possess. These projections, she said, studying one particularly complex model. The algorithmic approach is unique. I haven't seen anything like it. It's a proprietary method I developed, I explained, pulling up the supporting documentation. It accounts for market volatility in ways traditional models miss. Brilliant. She turned to Richard. Why hasn't Ms. Martinez been presenting to us all along? The question hung in the air like a blade. Marcus's face had gone gray, his laptop closed, his career evaporating with each word I spoke. The presentation concluded with Catherine Morrison's rare smile. This is exactly what we needed. Richard, I assume Ms. Martinez will be our primary contact moving forward. Actually, I interjected smoothly, I run an independent consulting firm. I'd be happy to discuss a formal engagement with Morrison Industries directly. Catherine's smile widened. Even better. I prefer working with principals, not intermediaries. The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of follow-up. Marcus remained frozen in his chair as the room emptied, until only Richard, security, and I remained. Your personal items will be boxed and sent to your home. Richard informed him with Arctic coldness. Your corporate accounts have been frozen pending the criminal investigation. And if you ever use my company as a reference, I'll ensure every potential employer knows exactly why you were terminated. Claire, Marcus turned to me, desperation cracking his voice. Please, let me explain. Explain what? The theft? The affair? The $87,000 you stole from our future? I gathered my materials with steady hands. Or should you explain why you were planning to leave me for Veronica once you drained every account? His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. For the first time in our marriage, Marcus Chen had no smooth words, no easy lies. Your girlfriend is being escorted out by security as we speak, I added, snapping my laptop case closed. The apartment you co-signed for? That lease becomes solely your responsibility in case of her unemployment, though I doubt you'll be able to afford it without a job. You destroyed me. His voice was hollow, defeated. No, Marcus, you destroyed yourself. I just documented it. I walked out of the conference room, out of his professional life, out of the chapter of my story where I played the trusting wife. Behind me, security officers flanked Marcus for his humiliating exit from the building he'd thought he'd conquered. In the elevator, my phone buzzed with messages. Catherine Morrison requesting a meeting Monday to discuss consulting arrangements. Diane Walsh confirming the asset protection was complete. Alex reporting that Veronica had been fired and was currently having a very public meltdown in the lobby. But the most satisfying notification was from our bank. Fraud investigation complete. Joint account access restored. I smiled, knowing Marcus would discover his personal accounts frozen by court order the moment he tried to access them, every credit card canceled, every asset locked down, even his car still in the company garage now property of the criminal investigation. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, where Veronica's sobs echoed off the marble. Mascara streaked her face as security officers stood impassively by her box of personal items. Designer handbags and stolen dreams all packed up in cardboard. She saw me and lunged, held back only by security's firm grip. "You bitch, you ruined everything." "No," I corrected, walking past her toward the sunlit street. "I revealed everything. There's a difference." Outside, the city hummed with Friday afternoon energy. Somewhere in this metropolis, Marcus was discovering that his keycards no longer worked, his parking pass was invalid, his entire professional identity had been erased in a single afternoon. By Monday, the criminal charges would be filed, the forensic accountants would freeze every hidden asset, the professional network he'd cultivated would close ranks against him, and Veronica, sweet gold-digging Veronica, would learn that her latest mark was now worthless, worse than worthless, a liability whose name was toxic in every corporate circle. I hailed a cab, giving the driver my hotel address. There was packing to do, a divorce to file, a business to build with Morrison Industries, but first, I would pour a glass of wine and savor this moment of perfect justice. Marcus had emptied our accounts for shopping sprees. In return, I'd emptied his life of everything: career, reputation, freedom, and the mistress he'd sacrificed it all for. The cab pulled into traffic, carrying me away from the wreckage of my marriage and toward whatever came next. Through the rear window, I caught a glimpse of Marcus on the sidewalk, phone to his ear, presumably discovering that his world had ended not with a bang but with a spreadsheet. I turned away, facing forward. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't served cold. It was served with PowerPoint slides and evidence binders, with calm professionalism and irrefutable proof, and it was absolutely devastatingly complete. The weekend following Marcus's professional execution passed in a blur of legal documents and cardboard boxes. I'd returned to our house, my house now, on Saturday morning to find his car in the driveway, deposited there by the company after they'd revoked his parking privileges. He was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding at his mother's or crashing with whatever friend still answered his calls. Moving systematically through our home, I began the archaeological process of separating one life from another. 12 years of marriage reduced to his and mine piles. The wedding china went into storage, too beautiful to discard, too painful to use. Photo albums disappeared into boxes, their lying smiles sealed away from light. My phone had become a lightning rod for the storm I'd unleashed. Messages from mutual friends seeking gossip, from Marcus's family demanding explanations, from numbers I didn't recognize that were probably Veronica's desperate attempts at contact. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the satisfying buzz of business opportunities. Catherine Morrison had already sent a formal consulting proposal. 3 other companies Richard had mentioned my work to were interested in meetings. My expertise, hidden for so long in Marcus's shadow, was suddenly in demand. It was Sunday evening when Marcus finally appeared. I heard his key scraping in the lock, forgetting I'd had the locks changed that morning. The doorbell followed, tentative at first, then increasingly insistent. I opened the door but left the chain on, studying him through the gap. 2 days of catastrophe had aged him 5 years. His usually perfect hair hung limp, his designer stubble had grown into unkempt scruff, and his clothes, the same ones from Friday's termination, were wrinkled beyond salvation. "Claire, please, we need to talk. We're talking." I kept my voice neutral, giving him nothing. "Can I come in? It's my house too." Was. Past tense. "Your belongings are in the garage, boxed and labeled. Take them and go. You can't just." He stopped, shoulders sagging. The police came to my mother's. They have a warrant. They're talking about federal charges. Corporate espionage tends to attract federal attention. I could go to prison. The words came out strangled, disbelieving. Yes. And you're okay with that? 12 years, Claire. Doesn't that mean anything? I laughed, short and bitter. It meant something to me. That's why I saved for our future while you spent it on your mistress. That's why I built my business while you stole my work. That's why I stayed faithful while you. It wasn't supposed to happen. He leaned against the doorframe, the picture of defeat. Veronica, she just understood me, appreciated me. Appreciated your credit cards, you mean? She's gone. His voice cracked. The apartment, her phone, everything. She disappeared the moment the money dried up. Of course she had. Alex's morning report had tracked Veronica to the airport, where she'd boarded a flight to Miami with a new target already identified through social media, a recently divorced real estate developer with a weakness for younger women. Shocking, I said flatly, a gold digger who digs gold. Who could have predicted? I lost everything for her. Tears tracked down his face, but they moved me as much as rain on glass. My job, my reputation, my freedom. You lost me the first time you lied about poker night. Everything else was just consequences catching up. I'll make it right. I'll testify against Veronica. Admit the work was yours, whatever you want. What I want is for you to leave. Your things are in the garage. The divorce papers are in box 1, labeled urgent. Sign them. And if I don't, I smiled, cold as winter moonlight, then I release the rest. The escort services charged to company cards, the gambling debts you hid, the loan you took out against your mother's house without telling her. His face went white. How did you? How did I miss it for so long is the better question. Love makes us stupid, Marcus. Lucky for me, betrayal makes us smart. I closed the door on his protests, engaging the deadbolt with a satisfying click. Through the peephole, I watched him shuffle to the garage, emerging with boxes that held the remnants of his former life, the designer suits that would hang unworn, the watches that would tick away prison time, the cufflinks I'd given him for anniversaries he'd spent planning theft. An hour later, Diane Walsh called. He signed the papers, uncontested, waived all claims to assets in exchange for you not pursuing criminal charges for the theft. I'm not pursuing charges, the company and federal prosecutors are. He doesn't seem to grasp the distinction. Let's keep it that way until everything's finalized. I poured wine, toasting the empty house. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, meetings with prosecutors, sessions with forensic accountants, the delicate dance of rebuilding a life. But tonight, I savored the silence of a space no longer poisoned by lies. Monday arrived with unseasonable warmth, spring asserting itself despite the calendar's protests. I dressed carefully for my meeting with Catherine Morrison. Not the suburban wife costume I'd worn for years, but the polished professional I'd always been underneath. Morrison Industries occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel ambition. Catherine met me personally in the lobby, a gesture of respect that didn't go unnoticed. Claire, I'm so glad you could meet. Friday was illuminating. That's one word for it. She laughed, leading me to a private elevator. I've been in business 30 years, seen every kind of corporate drama imaginable. But watching you systematically dismember your husband's fraud while maintaining perfect professionalism, that was art. I had excellent motivation. I imagine you did. The elevator opened to an executive floor that made Richard's offices look modest. I've been thinking about our needs beyond the immediate project. We're expanding internationally. The complexity of forensic analysis required what followed was the kind of opportunity I dreamed of when starting my consulting firm. A 6-figure contract with Morrison Industries, not for a single project but as their primary forensic consultant. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's betrayal had opened doors his support never had. There is one condition, Catherine added as we finalized terms. Complete discretion about the circumstances that brought us together. My board appreciates results, not drama. Understood, though Marcus's legal troubles will likely make the news. Legal troubles are his problem. Our connection to them doesn't need to be advertised. We shook hands, 2 women who understood that success often came wrapped in unexpected packages. As I left her office, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Local marketing executive arrested on corporate espionage charges. The article was brief but damning. Marcus's mugshot showed a broken man, his former confidence replaced by the hollow stare of someone whose reality had shattered. The charges were extensive: embezzlement, fraud, theft of intellectual property, corporate espionage. His lawyer, a public defender, offered no comment. I sat in my car, staring at the photo of the stranger wearing my husband's face. Somewhere in the city, his mother was probably crying, unable to understand how her golden boy had fallen so far. His friends were likely scrubbing their social media, distancing themselves from the scandal. And Veronica was probably selecting designer swimwear in Miami, already forgetting the man who'd destroyed his life for her attention. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of productivity. New clients emerged from Catherine's recommendations. My small consulting firm suddenly needed expansion. Office space, employees, infrastructure. I threw myself into building something real from the ashes of my marriage. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus's mother, Helen, appeared at my office without appointment. Age had been kind to her until this week. Now she looked every one of her 70 years. "May I come in?" Her voice held none of its usual judgment. The woman who'd spent years making subtle comments about my career, my cooking, my failure to produce grandchildren, now stood humbled at my door. I gestured her to a chair, maintaining professional distance. "What can I do for you, Helen?" "Tell me it isn't true." Her hands clutched her purse like a lifeline. "The charges, the woman, the money. Tell me there's some mistake." "I can't do that." "But you could help him. Drop the charges. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "I haven't pressed any charges. The state and federal prosecutors have, based on evidence of crimes that have nothing to do with me." "Everything to do with you." Her composure cracked. "He was happy before, successful. Then you had to have your career, your independence. You emasculated him." There it was, the real Helen emerging from beneath the grief. I'd stolen her son's masculinity by being successful. I'd driven him to crime by having ambitions. The mental gymnastics were impressive. "Helen, your son stole $87,000 from our joint accounts. He embezzled over $200,000 from his company. He sold corporate secrets. He did these things not because I had a career, but because he felt entitled to a lifestyle he couldn't afford and a mistress who validated his ego." Lies. All lies. That woman corrupted him. That woman targeted him because he was corruptible. There's a difference. She stood abruptly, age falling away as fury took over. "You destroyed my son. Your son destroyed himself. I just refuse to be collateral damage. I'll never forgive you for this. I'll never forgive him either. I guess we have that in common." She left without another word, her heels clicking sharp condemnation with every step. I knew she'd spend the rest of her life painting me as the villain in Marcus's tragedy. Let her. I had a future to build. That evening, Alex called with an update. "Veronica's in trouble. The Miami developer did his homework, found her pattern. She's been arrested for identity theft, apparently tried to open credit cards in his name. Karma has a sense of humor. Gets better. She's trying to flip on Marcus, claiming he taught her everything about corporate theft. Prosecutors are very interested." I laughed, dark and satisfied. "Of course she is. No honor among thieves." Speaking of which, Marcus's lawyer reached out, wants to discuss a plea deal. Seems they've realized how much evidence you compiled. Not my problem anymore, but it was in ways that kept surfacing. Our social circle splintered, friends choosing sides or disappearing entirely. His family painted me as a vindictive harpy who'd destroyed a good man over a mistake. The truth was messier, harder to explain at dinner parties. Some nights, alone in the house we'd shared, I found myself grieving. Not for Marcus, that man had never really existed, but for the life I'd thought we were building. The children we'd planned, the travels we'd saved for, the growing old together we'd promised. All of it had been built on foundations of sand. But grief was a luxury I couldn't afford. Morrison Industries' project demanded excellence. New clients required attention. The business I'd neglected while playing supportive wife finally got the focus it deserved. 2 weeks after the arrest, Marcus's trial date was set. The media had picked up the story. Successful executive brought down by greed and lust. They loved the angle of the wronged wife who'd exposed it all, though I declined every interview request. My work would speak for itself. It was a Thursday when the past made one last attempt at contact. I was reviewing contracts in my new office, a corner suite with views of the city, when my assistant announced a visitor. "She says she's Veronica Sinclair. Should I call security?" I considered it, then curiosity won. Send her in. But stay close. The woman who entered bore little resemblance to the Instagram goddess who'd destroyed my marriage. Designer clothes replaced by court-appropriate conservative wear. Professional makeup gone, revealing exhaustion and desperation. The gold digger had struck pyrite. Thank you for seeing me. She sat without invitation, movements sharp with nervous energy. You have 5 minutes. I need your help. The words tumbled out, rehearsed but desperate. The charges in Miami, they're serious. Identity theft, fraud, I could get 10 years. And I have information about Marcus. Things he did that you don't know about. Other women, other thefts. Going back years. I leaned back, studying her. You think I care about ancient history? You cared enough to destroy him. I cared about protecting myself and revealing the truth, both accomplished. What Marcus did before is irrelevant now. It's not irrelevant to his other victims. She pulled out a flash drive, setting it on my desk like an offering. 3 other women he convinced to invest in fake ventures, 2 former colleagues he sabotaged, all documented here. Why give this to me? Because you're the only one who beat him. The only one he couldn't con or control. Her voice broke slightly. I thought I was playing him, using him. But he was using me too, setting me up to take the fall if things went wrong. Which they did. She stood, defeat in every line. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship, just justice for the others. Make sure he pays for all of it. She left the flash drive and walked out, dignity intact despite everything. I plugged it in after she left, finding exactly what she'd promised. More victims, more schemes, more evidence of the stranger I'd married. I forwarded everything to the prosecutors, adding weight to an already overwhelming case. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me. He'd left a trail of financial and emotional destruction spanning years. The man I'd loved had been a fiction, a character he'd crafted to hide the predator underneath. That night, I updated my security system and changed my phone number one more time. The past kept trying to claw its way back, but I was building walls faster than it could climb. Catherine Morrison called as I was leaving the office. Heard you had an interesting visitor today. News travels fast. Everything travels fast in our circles. How are you holding up? I'm building something new. That's all anyone can do. Well said. By the way, I'm hosting a charity gala next month. Business leaders, philanthropists, the usual suspects. I'd like you to come, as my personal guest. I appreciate that, Catherine, but no buts. You've hidden in shadows long enough. Time to show this city who Claire Martinez really is. She was right. I'd spent so long being Mrs. Marcus Chen that I'd forgotten how to just be Claire. The gala would be a statement. I hadn't just survived, I'd thrived. As I drove home through darkening streets, I thought about transformation. Marcus had emptied our accounts for shopping sprees, thinking money was power, but real power came from truth, from competence, from the ability to rebuild after destruction. He'd taken our savings, I'd taken everything else. His career, his freedom, his carefully constructed illusions. The exchange rate was fair, all things considered. The house felt different now, not empty but expectant, waiting to be filled with a new life, new dreams, new possibilities that didn't depend on anyone else's validation or betrayal. I poured wine and opened my laptop, reviewing the Morrison Industries project. The numbers were clean, honest, promising. No stolen work, no inflated projections, no lies dressed as love, just truth, sharp and clean as good revenge. The federal courthouse stood like a monument to justice, delayed but not denied. 6 months had passed since I'd discovered Marcus's betrayal, 3 months since his arrest, and now, on a crisp October morning, the trial that would seal his fate was beginning. I dressed carefully, a black suit that meant business, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a style that said competent professional rather than scorned wife. The media would be there, drawn to the story of corporate greed and marital betrayal like flies to honey. I wouldn't give them the dramatic widow they craved. Diane Walsh met me at the courthouse steps. Ready for this? I've been ready since the day I found out. Inside, the courtroom was already filling. I recognized faces from Marcus's former company, investigators who'd worked the case, and there in the back row Helen Chen, dressed in mourning black as if her son were already dead. Marcus entered in shackles, the sound of chains a stark contrast to the designer shoes he'd once prized. Prison had not been kind to him. The man who'd spent thousands on skincare now bore the pallor of fluorescent lights and sleepless nights. His attorney, the public defender assigned to his case, looked resigned to defeat. I took my seat in the section reserved for witnesses, close enough to see every expression that crossed Marcus's face. He found me immediately, his eyes pleading for something: mercy, forgiveness, understanding. I gave him nothing but steady observation. The prosecutor, Janet Rodriguez, was a force of nature in navy blue. She'd built her career on complex financial crimes, and Marcus's case was a gift wrapped in evidence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "This case is about betrayal. Not just marital betrayal, though that's where it started, but betrayal of trust, of fiduciary duty, of the very foundations that allow businesses to function." She outlined the charges methodically. Embezzlement, $247,000 stolen over 2 years through falsified expense reports. Corporate espionage, confidential client information sold to competitors for personal gain. Wire fraud, electronic transfers used to hide the money trail. Identity theft, using his wife's credentials to access and steal her intellectual property. "The defendant didn't just steal money," Rodriguez continued. "He stole ideas, innovations, and identities. He built his career on the brilliance of others while funding a lifestyle of deception." The defense attorney's opening was painfully brief. Stress, marital problems, a momentary lapse in judgment that spiraled out of control. He painted Marcus as a victim of circumstances and Veronica's manipulation. It might have been compelling, if not for the mountain of evidence waiting to bury it. The first witness was Richard, Marcus's former boss. His testimony was devastating in its precision. Every falsified report, every client meeting that never happened, every project Marcus had claimed while others did the work. "I trusted him," Richard said, his disappointment palpable, "mentored him, and he used that trust to rob the company blind." The forensic accountant came next, walking the jury through a labyrinth of financial deception. Charts and graphs showed money flowing from corporate accounts through a maze of transfers, always ending in cash withdrawals or purchases for Veronica. "The defendant was methodical," she explained. "This wasn't impulse. It was a carefully orchestrated scheme requiring planning and continuous deception." By lunch, Marcus's defense was already crumbling. I stepped outside for air, finding Alex waiting with coffee. "How are you holding up?" "Better than him." I nodded toward the courthouse. "Any word on Veronica?" "Pled guilty in Miami. 5 years, out in 3 with good behavior. She's already working on her memoir, Gold Digger's Regret, or something equally tasteless. She'll find another Mark within 6 months of release." "Probably, but it won't be someone like Marcus." Word travels in those circles. After lunch came the testimony that mattered most to me. 3 women Marcus had defrauded before we met, their stories painting a pattern of predatory behavior. He'd convinced them to invest in fake ventures, promising returns that never materialized. One had lost her retirement savings. Another had borrowed against her home. "He was so convincing," one testified, tears streaming. "Made me feel stupid for asking questions, like I didn't understand business." I recognized the technique, the same gaslighting he'd used when I'd questioned our finances, the same condescension when I'd offered business advice. Marcus wasn't just a thief. He was a serial emotional manipulator. The prosecution saved me for last. Day 2 of the trial. I took the stand feeling strangely calm. This was just another presentation, another set of facts to convey clearly and comprehensively. "State your name for the record." "Claire Elizabeth Martinez." "Ms. Martinez, what is your relationship to the defendant?" "I was his wife. We're divorced now." Rodriguez walked me through the discovery, letting me paint the picture of that night when a simple notification unveiled years of deception. The jury leaned forward as I described finding the social media posts, the credit card statements, the systematic draining of our accounts. "How much money did the defendant take from your joint accounts?" $87,000 over 6 months. This doesn't include the intellectual property he stole or the savings he prevented by sabotaging my business relationships. "Can you elaborate on the intellectual property theft?" I pulled up the presentations side by side. My original work, date-stamped and verified. Marcus's versions claimed as his own. The jury could see the copying wasn't just similar ideas. Entire sections were lifted verbatim. This algorithm I developed increased client retention by 34%. Marcus presented it as his innovation and received a promotion based on its success. "How did you feel when you discovered this?" I paused, choosing words carefully. "Betrayed. Not just as a wife but as a professional. I'd shared my work with him seeking feedback, believing we were partners. He saw it as an opportunity for theft. The cross-examination was brutal, but expected. Marcus's attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife, orchestrating his downfall out of jealousy over Veronica. "Isn't it true you were angry about the affair?" "I was hurt by the affair. I was angry about the theft. You systematically destroyed his career." I systematically revealed the truth. His career was built on lies. The destruction was inevitable once those lies were exposed. You could have handled this privately through divorce proceedings. While he continued embezzling, while other women lost their savings to his schemes, I had an obligation to prevent further harm. The attorney had no response to that. Ethics tend to complicate revenge narratives. When I stepped down, I passed Marcus's table. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw no remorse there, only rage at being caught. The man I'd loved had never existed. This stranger wearing his face was the reality I'd been too blind to see. The defense's case was pitiful. Character witnesses who barely knew him, a psychologist who'd met him twice claiming stress-induced temporary judgment impairment. Marcus himself took the stand on day 3, and it was a disaster. He tried charm first, the easy smile that had won me over in college. But federal prosecutors aren't impressed by charisma. Rodriguez dismantled him piece by piece, using his own emails and texts to show premeditation. This message to Ms. Sinclair, dated 3 months before your arrest. You wrote, "Don't worry about the money. Claire doesn't check the statements. I can get another 10K easy." How is that a momentary lapse? I was trying to impress her. By stealing from your wife, I was going to pay it back. When? After you divorced her and claimed alimony, as stated in this draft email? The jury's expressions hardened with each lie. Marcus, sensing the room turning, made a fatal error. He blamed me. She was always working, always focused on her career. A man needs attention, appreciation. Veronica gave me that. So you stole $87,000 because your wife had a job. She didn't understand me. Did she understand you were stealing her work? Using her ideas to advance your career while planning to leave her? By the time Marcus left the stand, his fate was sealed. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. I sat in the gallery, watching the man I'd once promised to love forever learn his fate. 10 to 15 years federal prison, restitution to all victims totaling $500,000, a lifetime ban from working in financial services. Marcus collapsed at the verdict, his mother's wails echoing through the courtroom. But I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, just empty finality. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I'd prepared a statement, knowing this moment would come. I hope this case serves as a reminder that financial abuse in relationships is real and devastating. I was fortunate to have the skills to expose it. Many victims aren't. If you suspect your partner is hiding financial information or making unilateral decisions about shared assets, seek help immediately. Ms. Martinez, do you forgive your ex-husband? Forgiveness isn't mine to give. He needs to earn it from all his victims, starting with himself. I pushed through the crowd to my car, driving away from the courthouse and the chapter of my life it represented. Marcus would spend the next decade in federal prison. Veronica was already serving her sentence in Florida. The money was gone, but I'd rebuilt. Morrison Industries had become my anchor client, leading to contracts with 6 other major corporations. My firm had grown from a home office to a suite downtown with 12 employees. The hollow-eyed woman who'd discovered her husband's betrayal at 2:47 a.m. had transformed into someone harder but infinitely stronger. Catherine Morrison's charity gala was that weekend. I stood before my mirror that evening, fastening diamond earrings I'd bought myself with money I'd earned, not stolen. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to Marcus's wife. This was Claire Martinez, forensic consultant, business owner, survivor. The gala was at the Fairmont, the same hotel where Marcus had taken Veronica while I thought he was playing poker. I walked through those doors with my head high, reclaiming the space from tainted memories. Claire, Catherine swept over in designer red, champagne flutes appearing as if by magic. You look stunning. That suit is perfect. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for coming. I want you to meet some people. The CFO of Dynamics Corp is dying to discuss their internal audit needs. The evening became a blur of handshakes and business cards. I found myself holding court, discussing forensic techniques and fraud prevention with Fortune 500 executives. They knew my story, everyone did, but it had become credential rather than scandal. Miss Martinez? A young woman approached hesitantly. I'm Sarah Kim from Tech Now. I heard you speak at the federal courthouse. My boyfriend, I think he's doing something similar. Taking money, hiding things. Could we talk? I handed her my card. Call my office Monday. First consultation is free. She clutched it like a lifeline. Another woman trapped by trust, about to learn its price. I'd help her, just as the forensic accountant had helped me, building something positive from destruction. "You're quite the celebrity," a familiar voice observed. I turned to find James Morrison, the actual head of Morrison Industries and Catherine's husband. "I prefer cautionary tale. I prefer inspiration. You took a personal catastrophe and turned it into professional triumph. That's rare. I had good motivation." "Indeed. Catherine speaks highly of your work. We're considering opening an Asian division. The forensic challenges would be considerable." Another opportunity born from ashes. We discussed possibilities until Catherine reclaimed me for more introductions. The evening wore on, each conversation another thread in the network I was weaving. By midnight, I had enough potential contracts to keep my firm busy for years. Driving home through empty streets, I thought about transformation. 6 months ago I'd been half of a whole, defined by my relationship to Marcus. Now I was complete unto myself, successful on my own terms. The house was dark, quiet, mine alone. I poured wine and stood at the window where I'd once watched Marcus leave for his final poker game. The city sparkled below, full of secrets and opportunities. My phone buzzed. An email from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Marcus had requested to add me to his visitor list. I deleted it without reading further. That chapter was closed, sealed with federal documentation and moving on. He'd taken our money for shopping sprees, thinking material goods were the height of achievement. I'd taken his freedom, his future, his carefully constructed false life. The exchange rate was more than fair. I raised my glass to the window, toasting the woman I'd become through fire and betrayal. Marcus had done me one favor. He'd shown me I was stronger than I knew. That Claire Martinez didn't need anyone else's validation or support to succeed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients, new opportunities to help women like Sarah Kim before they lost everything. I'd built a reputation on exposing lies and revealing truth. It was good work, necessary work, born from the worst night of my life. But tonight I simply stood in my empty house, comfortable in solitude, successful in revenge, and finally, completely free. The nightmare that began with a 2:47 a.m. notification had ended with an empire built on its ashes. Marcus had emptied our accounts for designer goods that would rot in storage while he rotted in prison. I'd emptied his life and filled my own with something far more valuable: purpose, success, and the knowledge that I'd never be anyone's victim again. The wine was excellent, the view was perfect, and somewhere in a federal facility, Marcus Chen was learning that the price of betrayal was everything he'd ever valued. I smiled, turned away from the window, and began planning tomorrow's victories. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.